Cesar, what does smart listening mean to you, and how can it help project managers kind of make informed decisions and avoid some of the common pitfalls in project management or project data management?
You probably heard people saying, hey, there is not such a thing as a bad question, which I agree 100%. There is not such a thing as a bad question. What I disagree 100% is when people is telling me there is no such a thing as a bad idea. If an idea cannot be accomplished or cannot be...
When it comes to achieving project success, many factors come into play. But one critical skill is often overlooked: the art of listening. In the fast-paced world of AEC project management, where decisions must be made quickly and data constantly flows, it's easy to prioritize action over understanding. But what if the real key to success isn't just about planning or execution, but listening? That's where smart listening comes in, a powerful yet simple technique that can mean the difference between a project that thrives and one that falls apart. Joining me today is Cesar De La Garza, Senior Project Manager at Ghafari Associates, who will be talking about smart listening and how it plays a pivotal role in project management, especially when it comes to data management, leadership, and building trust with others. We'll also dive into adaptability, continuous learning, which all PMs should be doing, and the work ethic that drives top-performing PMs in our industry. And Cesar's got a great tip that he uses to kind of manage his teams by having 3 clear values for them. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast. Now, before we jump in, here's a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, School of PE. Are you putting off preparing for licensure? Waiting for life to slow down so you have time to prep? Months from now, you could find yourself still waiting for the right time. Or you could start preparing today with School of PE. Take the guesswork out of exam prep. With 93% pass rates, expert instructors, and a pass guarantee, you'll be walking into that exam fully prepared. Make the right choice today. Enroll now and save 32% with promo code EMI32 at schoolofpe.com. That's SCHOOL of PE.com. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Cesar De La Garza is a Senior Project Manager at Ghafari Associates. Cesar, welcome to the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're happy to have you. So maybe you can start off by sharing a little bit about your background, kind of what inspired you to get into project management in the engineering industry, and, how'd you get to kind of Senior PM at Ghafari?
All right. Thank you. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity. A little bit of my background, I can tell you I was born and raised in Mexico. I lived in Mexico for about 30 years. Actually, not for about 30 years, 30 years. And then I graduated from the State University in Monterrey, Nuevo León. Graduated in 1991 from Industrial Engineering and Administration. And then I specialized in business administration as well as finance. I moved to United States back in September 1999. And I can tell you the original plan was for me to stay in the United States for 1 year. And then I was going to go back to Mexico and be the liaison engineer between the company that hired me and the customers in Mexico. Well, I guess the plan didn't work out really well because 25 years later, I'm still here. I'm happy to be here, to be honest. I mean, it was a great opportunity. I got a couple of hobbies, but the ones that I enjoy the most, Anthony, is I like to exercise, body and mind. I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and I like to solve Sudoku puzzles every day, basically. Every day I work on that. What inspired me being on the AEC industry, basically in my early career, I had different roles, different companies, different roles. But I was focused in just one product, or I was focused basically in every single role that I had in the different companies. I was just focused on what they were producing, what they were making, just one product, 1 or 2 products, nothing else, basically. And then what it caught my attention on the AEC industry is that it was not going to be just one product. I mean, it was an open variety of products, basically.
Right.
Not just one customer, not just one product, not just one process. It was an infinity amount of products. And I said, that's me. That's challenge. That's what I
Right.
want to do.
A
So
lot of moving parts, a lot of things to
exactly,
focus on, a lot of projects to manage.
exactly.
So Caesar, what does smart listening mean to you, and how can it help project managers kind of make informed decisions and avoid some of the common pitfalls in project management or project data management?
Yeah, actually, I gotta be honest. Smart listening is my own lingo. I mean, I call what I do is smart listening. I don't think if you Google smart listening, I don't think it's gonna come
Right.
up. But that's what I do. That's my philosophy, basically. And what I do, Anthony, is you probably heard people saying, "Hey, there is not such a thing as a bad question," which I agree 100%. There is not such a thing as a bad question. Where I disagree, and again, this is my own view for the people that is going to be listening to this podcast. This is my own view. Where I disagree 100% is when people is telling me there is no such a thing as a bad idea. In my opinion, if an idea cannot be accomplished or cannot be achievable within budget, timing, or the available resources, that's not a good idea. Basically, I need
Right.
to start. 80% of my job is to engage with people. I need to pick their brain. I need to know what they are thinking. I need to know process, especially with new customers. So I need to. Any good project management need to be able to filter what they are telling you and just focus on what is going to bring value added to the project. What is going to be value added. You cannot evaluate if you get in a meeting. If you're in a meeting with 20 people, I can tell you're going to get 20 different ideas, probably more than that, because every head is got a different idea.
Right.
A good project management or project manager cannot evaluate every single idea and create business case, pros and cons for every idea. Uh, it's not possible. It's
Sure.
not possible because at the time you do all that, you go back to the individuals and say your idea is no good because this and that. And then he's going to tell you, he or she is going to tell you, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And it's a never end. So a good project manager has to be able, and that's what I communicate to my team, is that we got to be able to filter and pick and choose the ideas that are going to be value added to the project, value added to what we are going to do at the final product. Basically, that's what I call smart listening.
No, I think it's great. I mean, we're big proponents of that at EMI. We do a lot of PM training, and one of the things that we share in our training is something called the 13 questions, which was developed by one of our instructors, Ann Tomalavich, which is when you have a kickoff meeting, you go through these questions and you ask questions of your clients about the project early
Mhm.
on, and then you listen to them and you figure out, why are you doing this project? What are the biggest challenges on the project? And the one question that we like to ask is, what keeps you up at night about the project, right? Like, what's really bothering you about the project? And I think when you start to listen and get this information from your clients, then you can best serve them, to your point, and make sure that they have the best experience. And of course, the project gets done, and serves the purpose that they're looking
Correct.
for, right?
Exactly.
Which can be different for every client, even though it could be a similar type of project. So I definitely think that's great advice for project managers is when you go into your kickoff meeting or when you start your project off or when you start a relationship off with a new client or stakeholder, you have to be listening because they really have all the answers,
Yeah.
right? And you
Exactly.
have you have to try to get that out of them. So I think that
Yeah.
that's a really good approach. So
Exactly.
so what are some of the strategies that you can use, Caesar, to ensure that you are really understanding kind of and interpreting the data and the information correctly during these conversations with your clients or team members?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Besides what I call smart listening, I do active listening. So I try to focus on what we are doing basically. Before I go into a meeting or before I interview with a new customer, I try to prepare myself and try to understand their product, try to understand their culture, their history. So I'm not going there empty hand. So that is going to help me to ask smart questions basically during the meeting. And then I want to interact with them. I try to make sure that I do not leave empty spaces in my understanding. For example, let me give you a quick example.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially with new customers, if I'm talking to a new customer and they start talking about a warehouse management, and they can start saying, hey, well, we need the supervisor to load the data on the WMS so they can transfer that to the SAP, so the CMC people can transfer that to the PFEP. So, I use all the lingos on project management for warehousing. People may be thinking, okay, this guy, what is he saying? What is he doing? So I try to understand all of that before the meeting, but I won't be able to catch everything. So I try to paraphrase everything that the customer is telling me sometimes if I don't understand. And then I try to say, okay, well, when I paraphrase, if I really hesitating on understanding what they are saying, I put a question mark at the end, basically. Sometimes I can say, hey, so you're saying this, this, and that. I just confirm it. But if I really hesitating that I understood what they are trying to communicate to me, I just put a question mark and say, so you are saying this, and I expect a feedback from them. That's basically what I use. And I try to communicate that to my team also and say, hey, if you understand what I'm saying, please ask me.
Yeah. No, I think that's great because, I think clarifying things and making sure you're on the same page with project stakeholders, especially your clients, is really important for you to be able to serve them, kind of like we said earlier.
Correct. Yeah.
So I guess the next important question would be, I think this sounds great and it sounds very important, but how can you teach or mentor your team members to take that approach when they're with clients and when they're in project meetings? That would be the next step.
Well, yeah. Well, I can tell you I'm not a teacher, I'm not a trainer, but I like to mentor people. And the way I started before, I mean, if I'm gonna be the project lead of any project, any team, I need to make sure that what I'm communicating is gonna be they are gonna understand what I'm saying. And before I do that, I need to understand myself first. So when I'm planning a project, my first step is to plan the project before I kick off the project. So I plan the project by myself, and everything that I'm going to communicate to my team in regards task, challenge, assumptions, and all that, I need to understand those before I communicate those to the team. If you start talking to your team and you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to lose them.
Right.
Basically, they are going to get frustrated. They are going to lose interest in what you're saying, and they will not listening to you. Basically. So, and that's the same thing that I create with my customers. Basically, I try to be smart of what I do with them and my questions. And again, I'm not going to tell them I'm the expert in your product if you're a brand new customer, but I'm going to tell you I got knowledge of your product, and this is the question that I have based on that. So, I basically ask for feedback sometimes. It's like, okay, hey guys, this is what I do. Sometimes I do like a pop quiz, if you will, and say, okay, you guys understand your assignments, you guys understand your due dates, can you tell me what's your assignment, can you tell me this and that. It's kind of pop quiz.
Right. Get them to repeat it back to you.
Exactly, that's basically when I'm making sure that they are listening to me, but I have to make sure that I understand myself first, basically.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think that's an important part of project management is you need to be able to kind of mentor and guide your team members because they're hopefully going to become project managers soon. And I think one of the ways you can try to do that is to, have them involved in some of these meetings with you and let them watch some of the things that you're doing. Like, Caesar, you explained earlier some of the specific things you do with your clients where you're rephrasing things, you're asking them
Correct.
questions. And I think if your team members can be with you in some of these meetings and get to see that firsthand, that can be helpful for them when it comes their time, to step up because they've kind of seen you doing it, which I know can be it's another form of mentoring essentially.
Correct. Yeah. And the other thing, really quick, Anthony, one of the things that I tell my team is one of my ground rules. Basically, is start talking over. I really want them to stop talking over. It's a very common human habit. I mean, we sometimes we talk over because we want to guess the answer, or we think that we know what this person is going to be saying. So I just tell everybody, let me finish or let everybody finish, and then we will see what we need to comment about it. So I want to make sure that they listen what I have to say or other people is going to have to say before we start talking over them. That's kind of my ground rules, basically.
I think that's great because I do think that sometimes people do that because they're excited, but it
Yeah,
definitely comes off as being very disrespectful to people
correct.
if
Exactly.
if you're doing that. So that is important. So, Cesar, you've been in the industry for a while now. You've been managing projects for a long time. How would you say that continuous learning has really helped you to shape your ability to be able to adapt to different project challenges and, continue to be successful? Because we know things are always changing.
Correct. Well, continuous learning is very important, and it took me a while. I can tell you to learn that. Way when I was way younger, when I was in high school and college, I can tell you in my mind was I couldn't wait to get out of school. I couldn't wait to stop learning because in my head it said as soon as I'm done with college, I don't have to learn anything. I did my time on school, and I just gonna go and get a job and be sitting behind a desk the rest of my life. That was probably a wrong thing to think, but that's what I was thinking way back then. Thank God I changed that mentality. I keep learning, and not just. And we have the tools. We have the tools right now. We're internet. We got everything that is available to us to keep learning, and it's really important because, as you said, things are changing really, really, really quick.
Well, you make a good point in that right now, you don't have any excuse not to learn,
Correct.
right? I mean, you can go on YouTube, you can Google things, you can find anything, audio books, right? Podcast episodes, any skill that you want, you can find it and probably learn it if you want to. But it's up to you to understand what are the skill sets that are going to help you as a project manager, and how can I best learn them? And I think that that's something that you need to continuously assess in your career and in your life. Where can I improve right now?
Correct.
But I also think as a project manager or as a leader in an organization, you need to be doing that for your team members.
Correct.
And that's really important. I know at EMI, we like to assess people and say, hey, listen, if you want to get better at communication skills, see if you want to find a course that would work for you and we can talk about supporting you through it. So I think continuous development for you is definite. You have something you need to do, but also I think a good PM, a good leader can help their team members also, take on that mindset and continue to develop as well.
Yeah, that's correct. And something that I learned too, Anthony, guilty as charged. I didn't do this before, but I've been doing this for many years. I realized that besides learning from older generations, I mean, I had a mentor, and that those person are. I learned a lot from those persons. But something that I have learned is I can learn a lot for younger generations. I mean, we're always saying, "Oh, kids fresh out of college don't have the skills, don't have the experience, don't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
They are too green." We always say that, which is true. They don't have the experience. We were like that when we were in our 20s. But at the same time, I have learned that they have a lot that we don't have. They are growing a different generation and a different world that we grow up. Actually, you're very young. I mean, you're probably growing with them, but
I'm
uh,
not
uh,
that young, but
but my point is they have a lot that we don't have. They got some lack of skills and experience that they will get through their careers, but they are growing with something that we didn't, and we're just learning. They're catching up faster. Younger generation is taking over. The same way we took over from our parents or grandparents, we took over. Now a younger generation is taking over from us, and I've been learning a lot from them because it's coming and they are catching up faster than we do. So I want to keep up with the younger generation, and I've been learning a lot from them. I can tell you that.
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't think we should make assumptions about who we can learn from. I know for me, I mean, I have teenagers and they teach me how stuff on my cell phone all the time that I would
Yeah,
have no idea. Apps, there's a new app for this or that. And, it saves you time. But, I wouldn't have known that myself because I
correct.
wouldn't have thought to think of it. So I definitely think that continuous learning also applies to the people that you surround yourself with, which is important. So, Cesar, you mentioned earlier on that you like being in the AEC industry because there are a lot of different projects and a lot of different things you get to juggle. Can you maybe share with us a time where you were assigned to a project that maybe was outside of your expertise a little bit? how did you adapt? How were you able to use that maybe as an opportunity?
Well, I get a couple of different examples, but the one that I would like to share with you was early in my career back in 1992, way back then. I got hired. I mean, it's a long story, but I'm gonna try to be quick.
Sure.
I took a position knowing that I didn't gonna like the job.
Okay.
I was kind of back in that time. I was kind of selfish. I took the position because they offered me a brand new car. They offered me good salary, benefits per diem because I was going to be traveling, and they have sales conventions every 3 months. So I was going to be in vacation. I was 21 years old, and everything they offered me, I said, I don't like the job, but I'm going to take it. I mean, I was kind of selfish back in that time, but it was my young mentality, and I
You were
took
young. You were young.
so the job was sales. I don't like sales. My dad was a salesman. I saw what he did all his life, and I decided I cannot do that. That's not me. I cannot sell anything. The only way that I sell is with my job, basically. But I cannot sell. So I took the job, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, again, it's a long story, but I figured out that the distribution points that I was taking care of were lacking of organization. They didn't have inventory controls. They didn't have finance controls. They didn't have processes like a dealership. And if you go to a dealership and say, "Hey, can I have a red car?" "Oh, we don't have red. We just have blues." "Oh, okay. Well, now I don't have a blue one." Then you go to the same dealership or a different dealership. "Can I have a car with 4 wheels?" "Oh no, we just have cars with 3 wheels." I mean,
Right.
it's kind of crossing the line of the example, but the product was selling itself. The problem was the dealerships or the distribution points. So what I did is I started creating production control processes for them. When I say production control, it was inventory, finance, first in, first out. Sorry.
Right. So Caesar, in other words, you were saying that you could sell the stuff, but they weren't able to fulfill the orders.
Correct. Well, actually, let me put it this way: the product, the company was lead on that market, so the
Right.
product was selling itself. We didn't have to go and knock the door and say, "Hey, we're selling this." The product was such a good quality that was selling itself. The problem was the dealership that didn't have the product
Right. The
available,
supply wasn't there.
or it expired, or they
Right.
didn't find it. So I helped them organize their inventory, their finance, and everything. So really quick, when they introduced me to that, it was 35 different suppliers or 35 different dealerships, if you will.
Yeah.
It took us 7 days to go through all of them. So they introduced me and said, "This is Cesar is going to take over the zone." The second time, it took me about a month just to visit them again. That's when I understood the issue. And the third time that I visit all of them, it took me a year because that's when I start spending weeks with every single one of them. So the zone, I never sold anything. I never even
Right.
tried, but my zone went from being the worst one on sales to be the second best in a year and a half, basically. And I can
Because you
tell you,
addressed the problem.
I addressed the problem. I didn't sell anything. I just
Right.
addressed the problem, and my son went from the worst to the second best. And I just did what I like to do: industrial engineering processes and things like that. So
Right. Interesting. No, that's a good point. And I guess the point of that story to me is, you have to always isolate the real problem, right? And in this case, it wasn't really sales because the product was selling itself. It was
correct,
more they couldn't deliver the product, the supply chain, it wasn't there. So you
correct.
had to kind of use your project management background, your engineering background to help solve that part of the problem. And after that, you were making sales because it wasn't you. You didn't need to make sales.
Exactly. Yeah.
You needed to fulfill the sales, basically.
Yeah, we were visiting the customers. I mean, the paint shops, and they said, "Well, Cesar, we want to buy your product, but you don't have it, or it's expired, or they can't find it." And like, okay, hold on, give me 1 second. Let me try to figure out what's happening. So I fixed all of that, and that was it. That was the issue. And again, I don't like sales. I didn't sell anything, and that song went to be the second best in a year and a half. So I
That's great.
feel very proud of it. So,
No, that's a good story for sure. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about expectations, right? In the world of project management, in the consulting world, there's a lot of different expectations. There's expectations from the clients, there are technical guidelines, right? And as a project manager, you kind of have to manage these. You have to serve your clients, but you also have to do the right job technically and have
correct.
high quality projects and be efficient. So, how do you kind of balance all of these different expectations that are put on you as a PM?
Well, it's not easy. I can tell you that because besides all of those you're saying, I gotta balance my personal life too.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, I have to add to everything that you just said to my personal life too. So it's not easy, but at the same time, it's not difficult if you got a good team. So I always rely a lot in my team. I have to delegate a lot in them, and I one of the things that I try to have is always good communication with my team and my customers. I try to, uh, well, not try. I always push for weekly meetings where we review tasks, roadblocks, and opportunities with my team and with the customer. I try to minimize those as much as possible, but I try to do at least a weekly meeting with them. So I'm trying to communicate with verbal meetings. Right now, I will say 80% of my meetings are via Teams, if you
Okay.
will. I mean, after the 2020, all the meetings basically went through 100% of the meetings went through web. I mean, via Teams or WebEx or things like that. Now it's coming back to in-person meetings, and it's helping a little bit, but we still have the normal process as what we are doing right now, a video communication. So one quick thing that you're right. One quick thing that I always have as my personal value is three things actually: is quality, productivity, and efficiency. I mean, I keep all of this, and I show that to my team, and I tell them this is what I'm expecting from you, and this is what I'm going to give you: quality, productivity, and efficiency. But we prepare for roadblocks. We prepare for
Mm,
the Murphy law. Something is going to happen that you were
yeah.
not expecting. So, especially with the customer, one of the values of this company, Ghafari, that's the company that I work with, is to be there when the customer needs it. That's one of the values. So that tells me that I have to listen to the customer and make sure that the customer is happy and we take care of them. So that means two of my values, productivity and efficiency, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of productivity and efficiency of my team to make sure that the customer is satisfied with what they need. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit, but what I'm not willing to sacrifice, Anthony, is quality. We are not willing to sacrifice quality. That's our seal of this company,
Sure.
or seals of our job. That's how we sell more. That's the way I sell good quality. Maybe I'm going to sacrifice, again, productivity, efficiency to make sure that the customer is taken care, but I'm not sacrificing quality. And I communicate that to the supplier. I mean, not to the supplier, to the customer. I
Sure.
need to tell them, okay, this is what you're asking. This is potential issues, concerns, downfalls. This is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do. We will not sacrifice quality, even if basically we are forced to do it. We have to have the backup, and we basically give them two deliverables. This is what you're asking, and this is what we suggest. So we take care of the customer, but we do not sacrifice quality.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And I think that, well, first of all, just going back to what you said earlier, I think the idea of being able to delegate effectively is really important for project managers. And I think getting to that point in your career where you say, I have a team of people, I kind of need to give it to them and kind of get out of the way is important. I mean, you have to be there to support them, of course, still, but you don't want to become the bottleneck of your team.
Correct.
That's really important. So I wanted to reinforce that. But then I think going back to your last point here, I think that's great that you have a very clear kind of vision for your team, right? With those three pillars, right? Quality, productivity, and efficiency.
Correct.
And that's like no matter what's going on with them, they always can come back to those three pillars and think about how they're working in relation to those and think about what they're doing in relation to those. And then I think like you said, when you get into a situation, you could fall back on those 3 pillars and say, listen, our client really needs this. If we're going to, sacrifice a little bit of productivity or efficiency, that's fine, but let's deliver the highest quality
Correct.
project. And so I think people like to be able to work in some kind of atmosphere where there are some standards, right? Some
Correct.
values, some standards, but they're not overly complicated.
Okay, exactly.
Right. Which is nice about yours. It's 1, 2, 3. Are we doing these things every day? Great. If we're not, we've probably got to get back together and see what's going on.
Correct. And it's important because we got the support from our bosses, basically. They understand that, hey, why did you spend an extra hour on this project? I mean, we're based on hours.
Right.
This is our
Sure.
business. So why you spend 2 or 3 more hours that you were not scheduled to do it? Well, we did this. We took care of the customer. And they understand that. It's not like they ask you or they micromanage us, but they understand that sometimes we have to go over and beyond our responsibility because we want to take care of customers, not jeopardizing quality.
Absolutely. And that's important because in our industry, I would say for most private firms, 80 to 90% of their work is repeat work. So, if you go over a couple hours on one project, but you get another project from that client, right? It's worth it giving up a couple of hours here and there to keep the quality up because that's going to keep
Correct.
the relationship long term. So that's
Correct.
really important.
Exactly.
All right, Cesar, last question I have for you. We call it the PM pitfalls question, which is of all your work in project management, what would you say is one of the biggest pitfalls that you see kind of project managers fall into? And how can they kind of avoid it or kind of minimize that going forward on their project? What's a big challenge that you see a lot of PMs struggle with?
Well, yeah, that's a good one. And actually, this is something that I'm always afraid of: poor communication. That's my biggest concern on project management. Poor communication. It could be internal communication, it could be external communication. And again, going back to the way we are conducting meetings right now, we are via internet. Poor communication is the biggest pitfall that I'm afraid of. Is happening and it can happen. I gotta make sure that the team understand exactly what the target is. When I plan a project, basically, I make sure that everything is nice and clear for the kickoff of that project. If I kick off that project, I make sure that everybody understand. And as I told you before, I need to understand myself first. Poor communication can happen in different ways. Technical difficulties with the software, with the internet. It can happen with language barrier. It can happen. I mean, this company is international. English is not my first language, and we talk to everybody around the world. So poor communication or misunderstanding of the project, of the goal, and the needs. That's the biggest pitfall that I can see. Even in my own team, sometimes if they are not listening, if we don't train them, as I said, well, I don't know if I can train anybody, but if we don't mentor them and tell them, and this is what I'm expecting from you, they can come back and give me something different. If I don't tell them, hey, the building is 1 million square foot, I don't want them to start designing something for 2 million square feet, basically.
Right.
That will be a fiasco, basically, a loss of time and resources. So if I told them one of the key things is you gave me what I asked for first, and then if you got some suggestions, you can do that. But the communication is clear. This is what we are waiting for. This is what the customer wants. This is our target. So again, that's the kind of biggest concern as a pitfall as in project management. If you don't have good communication internally, externally, customers, contractors, we work a lot with contractors. So now you have your team, you have contractors, you get your customer,
Right.
and then the subcontractors. You get a lot of parties involved.
Sure.
If we are not in the same page, it can be a fiasco on your project. You're going to execute the project, but you're not going to complete the task. The project is not going to be successful because your tasks are going to be half done, basically.
Absolutely. And I think a couple of ways to really stay on top of that, like Cesar said, is have a great kickoff meeting at the beginning of your project and set some of those standards. And I think have a really good cadence of meetings with the right people, whether you're meeting with your subs once a week or, just to keep the communication flowing with all the stakeholders and parties involved can be really important. So,
Correct.
So once again, Cesar De La Garza, Senior Project Manager at Ghafari Associates. Cesar, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us here today on the AEC Project Management Podcast.
No, thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm glad to be here.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Cesar. He's got a lot of experience, and I think he gave us some really good tips for being more effective as a PM, especially with his smart listening kind of theory and the name that he gave to it. I think is perfect for us, and I appreciate him sharing it. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better project managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.